first, we're going to do the Q&A, and I'm going to introduce the panelists. We have with us Dr. Schubiner, who has been treating chronic pain patients for nearly 2 decades, and he's recognized as a leading researcher in the field. Much of his time now is devoted to teaching doctors and other healthcare professionals about the intricacies of this work. He is clinical professor at Michigan State University College of Human Medicine and author of the book Unlearn Your Pain. You can find his work online at unlearnyourpain.com.
And I just want to thank Kent and Marion for changing medicine so I don't have to, we don't have to do it. There, you guys are taking care of that. That's great. Thank you.
We're all in together, Howard.
We're trying. We also have with us Nicole Sachs, LCSW. Nicole is a speaker, writer, podcaster, and psychotherapist who has dedicated her work and her practice to the treatment of emotional and physical chronic pain. She is the author of the book, The Meaning of Truth, and the online courses, Freedom from Chronic Pain and Freedom from an Anxious Life. Her brand, The Cure for Chronic Pain, includes a website, a podcast, and a YouTube channel. Okay, and now I'm going to hand off to Marion to do the Q&A, and we'll be checking in on questions. Feel free to keep posting questions as we go, and we'll be organizing them as we go.
Great. Well, we're really excited to speak with both of you. Howard, as a lot of folks know, we started the film many years ago. It took us a few years to finish it. So can you catch us up on what is the latest in your treatment and some of the research you're conducting?
Is that why my hair was so dark back then? It's a long time. Yeah, I feel like we're learning every day. I mean, it's amazing how much things have changed. And I think we're really focusing on neuroscience a lot more, really focusing on the theory of predictive coding that I would urge everyone to read. Lisa Feldman Barrett's book, How Emotions Are Made, for a good understanding of predictive coding. And I explain, predictive coding to every single one of my patients, how the brain works, how neural circuits work, how the brain learns, and how we can calm the brain. So we're doing a ton of work with that. And Alan Gordon's book, The Way Out, just came out, and that is a really good descriptor of that side of things. And on the other side of things, we've also been working on emotional awareness and expression work and ISTDP type of work. So learning how better to do emotional processing work with people in relatively short settings. And there's some new research on that that's coming out, and some new studies that are now being done. So I think the two main things have been an increased emphasis on pain reprocessing and predictive coding and neural circuitry, and on the other hand, refining our emotional awareness type work.
That's great. Nicole, we're so excited to have you here with us today. I know you have had quite a TMS journey yourself. Can you talk to us a little bit about, some of your experience, but also how you, use that experience to become your life's work?
Sure. So I was originally diagnosed with degenerative spondylolisthesis. That was when I was 19, so 1990. It's been a bit. And my journey through that was pretty remarkable, because at the beginning I was told that I would not live a normal life. I couldn't travel. I couldn't play sports. I would probably not have biological children. It was a pretty dark diagnosis. And through my understanding of mind-body medicine and my work with Dr. John Sarno in the 90s, I was able to absolutely embrace the TMS diagnosis and move forward doing the work. And about 3 or 4 months after I became completely chronic pain free, and so just PS, I had 3 biological children. I exercised till the day they were born. I carried their suitcases up 3 flights of stairs. Like, there's nothing wrong with me, but my MRI and my X-rays look exactly the same. I had them retaken about 10 years later, just for fun, because that's what I do for fun, but also just to prove to myself that this was not something that was actually the problem, and it never was. And so about 2 or 3 months after I became chronic pain free, I contacted Dr. Sarno. It was when he was still practicing at NYU. And I said, how can I be of service? And he suggested that I come and speak at the alumni panel at NYU, which used to happen once a month. And I would come often. I think I would come nearly every month and speak with him on stage with 3 other panelists. And he and I just got really close, and I started, I reopened my private practice because I had put it on pause to have children. And he started referring into my practice. And then I just changed it from over the years, it changed from a general practice into a TMS / mind body practice. And it just kind of went from there. And in around 2012, one of my patients was like, you need to write a book. You cannot just do this for 1 hour at a time in these 4 walls. There's too much to be, it's kind of what you guys were saying in terms of the film. Too many people need to know about this, at least to know it's an option. And so that sort of started my whole push to get this word out there. I wrote the book, and then my practice kind of evolved, and I'm no longer in private practice, but I do teach and speak and write courses and run my online community just to get the message out to as many people as possible.
That's great. And we are so appreciative that you do. Howard, I want to touch on something Nicole was talking about with her diagnosis and her MRI of her back. We talk about this a little bit in the film. When you look at an MRI with crazy things happening in the back, many back doctors or surgeons or folks like that are going to say, here's your problem. And then it's sort of like, I think this happens with a lot. It's a misdiagnosis, right? So it can be mind-body syndrome, but also there are, certain malformed maladies in the back that are going to cause a lot of pain. So how do you sort of access whether or not that is a misdiagnosis or an actual back problem? Because I think this is something that can be really confusing to folks who are new to mind-body medicine.
Yeah, we deal with this every day, of course. I had a lady this week who was like, well, my other doctor told me that, and I had to refer her to a friend of mine who's a neurosurgeon who's mind-body informed to get her to find somebody else, because she wasn't listening to me. But an MRI can't tell you what the cause of your back pain is unless an MRI shows a tumor, a fracture, an infection, right? Or it shows a disc that's so large that's having pain and neurologic symptoms in the leg. She was having pain in both legs, the whole leg. So that couldn't possibly be due to what was seen on her MRI, because everyone, as you pointed out, has degenerative changes. 80% of 50-year-olds have degenerative changes without any pain. 60% of 50-year-olds have bulging discs without any pain. So it's really critical. And we just did a study. We just did an amazing study where we analyzed 220 consecutive people coming into a physical medicine clinic for chronic neck and back pain. And we found that 85% of them had nothing wrong with their back. 85% of these people with chronic neck and back pain. And we're documenting that, and we're going to be writing that article up soon, hopefully. So you can rule out a structural problem by making sure there's no fractured tumor infection. And then you can make sure that there's no huge disc by where the symptoms are. And then you can rule in a neural circuit or a mind-body condition by the actual clinical symptoms. Does the pain shift? Does it move? Is it in an area which is very large? I've got all these criteria written out, and I can send documents to anybody who wants that. And it's in our book. In our book for professionals, Hidden from View, those are outlined very, very clearly. And then you can rule in the neural circuit problem by the characteristics. So it's usually not that hard. It's sometimes hard getting people to believe you like this, if it just doesn't make sense. Some people get it, some people don't.
Right. Nicole, I think we're seeing this a little bit in long COVID too. And I know that you've done some work with that. So if you could talk a little bit about what you're seeing, because I do think obviously some folks are going to have longer symptoms of COVID, but then we're also seeing people with fatigue that may be being diagnosed as long COVID, but could it possibly be a mind-body condition or TMS?
You know, when I first saw long COVID becoming a thing, my TMS red flags went really straight up because, you know, anything that is fraught with so much emotion, COVID, fear, shame, feeling like you're an untouchable at the beginning. You know, many of the people that I've worked with that suffered from long COVID got it in March of 2020. And so it was right at the beginning when everything was so uncertain, the whole world went into lockdown and they were terrified. And many of them actually thought they had COVID, knew they had COVID, but couldn't even get a COVID test back then because it was just everything was so hectic. And many of the people that I have heard from had mild COVID symptoms. So I am not supposing, and also I'm not a medical doctor, that people who have things like damage to their heart or lungs are suffering from TMS. I'm talking about people who had very mild COVID and all of a sudden, after their very mild symptoms were over, have this almost worse than the original COVID, fatigue, tightness in the chest, feeling like there's a belt around their ribs where they can't even take a deep breath, headaches, blurred vision. And of course, they get all the neurological tests and they're normal. And so I started working with, I just always have to say, I don't do private practice work because I get a barrage of requests. But when I say working with people, I mean directing them to the work, directing them to resources like all the resources that we have out there, the TMS wiki and the different books and the different doctors that have written books, directing them to listen on audio to Dr. Sarno's The Mind Body Prescription to just understand what might be going on with their body. In doing that, I am hearing from people from all over the world, many of whom I've never met, that their long COVID symptoms are gone. And so, you know, a lot of the evidence that I have in my practice is circumstantial because what I do is I share the information, I help people come to belief because, you know, without belief, it's very hard for the brain and the nervous system to accept the diagnosis. You might want to accept it here, but you got to accept it here, you know, and belief really brings you there. And when people can buy into the belief and do the work, their symptoms are going away. So I have to believe that my hypothesis is true, which is with the amount of fear and meaning that was placed on COVID, certainly at the beginning, but ongoing, that long COVID is a manifestation of TMS.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Howard, I want to talk a little bit about challenging your triggers. I think, you know, we see this a little bit in the film, but for folks, we have a question that's about, you know, deconditioning of the body due to years of pain and lack of physical movement. How do you help your patients sort of get back to a normal life and get out of the sort of sedentary, but sometimes bedridden place that they've been in?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just to echo what Nicole was saying first about long haul COVID, though, it's the same thing that we see where people are diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease, people are diagnosed with chronic Epstein-Barr virus, chronic mononucleosis, people are diagnosed with vaccine side effects, people diagnosed with, you know, all sorts of things that are not actually physical structural disease processes. And so everyone deserves a careful and clinical evaluation. Never say everything is one thing. You know, I never say, you know, I never try to make grandiose statements because, you know, there may be exceptions. But the people that I've evaluated and that I've read about with long haul COVID symptoms, it's not actually due to ongoing virus or an immune attacking or immune, you know, autoimmune syndrome attacking the body. Now, your question was about triggers. So basically, the brain learns. Predictive coding means our brain is predicting what it should do. So if you bend over, your brain is predicting back pain, you're going to get back pain. If you eat a certain food, your brain is predicting stomach pain, you're going to get stomach pain. If your brain is predicting, you know, discomfort or headache or nausea or dissociation with changes in the weather, then your brain is going to do that. So these are really conditioned responses or learned responses. And the best way, and one of the great ways to figure that out is to have somebody close their eyes and imagine doing the activity. If you imagine doing the activity and then you begin to get some of the symptoms, or you begin to get fear and worry and tightness in your stomach or chest, then you know your brain is reacting to that sensation. And then you can imagine, you can calm your brain and tell yourself you're okay. And then you can imagine going into that activity. You can imagine bending. You can imagine going out in stormy weather. You can imagine looking at bright lights. You can imagine eating certain foods with joy, with ease, with grace, with calm. And when you do that, you're changing the neural circuits in your brain. And then you can gradually do more and more of that, imagining, and then actually engaging in the activity little by little in a gradual way in order to reverse the neural circuits. And it's really a great way to do this work, very effective, and people can do it on their own.
Great, thank you. Nicole, I wanted to talk a little bit about journaling. Howard has, some expressive writing in his book, but we don't really focus on it too much in the film, but I know that you do a lot of that with your community. So can you tell us a little bit about how you have your community approach it and how it can help them through their process?
Sure, absolutely. So what helped me the most, I think that all of us that are doing this work around the world are trying to bring our best practices, and so many of us have a personal experience with it. And for me, I could think about all of these conflicting things in my life from childhood and from daily life and from my personality, but writing things down helped slow. I'm a very fast thinker, fast mover. I'm a New Yorker. I walk fast, I talk fast. And so to calm me down, to slow me down, and to make space for epiphany. And so what originally happened when I was trying to heal from my chronic pain after I had met with Dr. Sarno, he explained to me the journaling, and I was doing the journaling. I was saying, I'm a mother and I'm very tired and I have 2 babies in cribs, and it was, it's more than I bargained for. But I wasn't saying the dark and ugly. I wasn't saying the kind of truth that my brain and my nervous system was responding to in giving me all this pain to help me divert from the greater predator, which was my repressed emotions. And what I found in my own awakening to this, that I created this practice called JournalSpeak. So it's more than just journaling. It's journaling in a very unabashed, impolite, politically incorrect, socially incorrect way. It is a dump of rage and sadness and fear and grief and shame, and just letting it all out onto the page. Because when I realized that what I really needed to say in that session was not, I'm tired and I'm overwhelmed, because those are very polite words that you could say to anyone. I had to say, I hate being a mother. I'm trapped. It's never going away, and I'm going to die. Now, we all know that that is not the way you end up feeling, but it's the 5-year-old inside. It's the inner child that is screaming at the top of her lungs saying, no one's ever heard me. And if no one continues to hear me, I will express through the body. And period, the end, that's what happens. And so when I was able to do this sort of untethered journaling, and what I realized in the practice is it made me feel safe when I finished my practice to dispose of it. So I was at the time writing on a legal pad, and I would rip it into a public garbage can and walk away. Now that I type on a computer, I just open a blank document. It's untitled. I do my JournalSpeak. When my phone goes off at 20 minutes, I select all, delete, and save the empty document so nothing's in the cloud. And it created this safety for me to just get it out, get it out, get it out. And what I like to explain to people is that if indeed the brain and the nervous system see your repressed emotional world as a greater predator than your physical pain, and is choosing your physical pain as the option that is less detrimental to your survival, when the emotions are felt, when the darkness is revealed, the pain is no longer necessary. What I find for thousands of people around the world that I work with is the pain signals stop firing. They just stop being in pain. And it's because of the work that they do. I use JournalSpeak as a vehicle to bring people to this ability to let things rise. Everybody has a different take on it. The reason I like the journaling is, like I said, it's a concrete way to slow things down and bring things to the fore.
That's great. I'm sure that's really helpful for a lot of people here today. Howard, we have a question from Amy in the chat about, when Amy started on the TMS path, the pain went away. And we see this on the message boards a lot. It works for a little while and then it either comes back or you get pain somewhere else. What do you recommend when that happens?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, there's going to be ups and downs along the way. There's going to be ups and downs in this process. Our brain has a danger alarm mechanism, and you need that. Everyone needs to have a danger alarm mechanism in their brain. If you don't have it, you're going to walk out in front of traffic. Mm-hmm. And so when your danger alarm mechanism gets activated, it's going to cause some message to you. The message might be fatigue or anxiety or depression or insomnia or headache or stomach pain or back pain or whatever. And so the brain has the capability, and the brain is creating all of our experiences all the time. And so this danger signal is always going to be there. I get pain. Pain happens to me on a semi-regular basis in my life due to my brain. And it's not because I'm crazy. It's not because I'm weak. It's because I'm human. And so the ups and downs of having pain and having pain go away are part of being human, and it's part of our brain's reactivity. And so you can see that and you can know that. And so what happens is when people's pain comes back, they get afraid or they get freaked out or they get worried. Or they think that they're a failure, or they think they'll never get better, and all these things happen. And by the way, all these scary thoughts are part of the brain's danger signal, giving you scary thoughts. That is another way for the brain to message you or alarm you or basically scare you. So the point is that you need to understand the process in a longer viewpoint, and you need to be able to go slowly and gradually and ride the storms and ride the waves of the ups and downs that are going to occur. And over time, you'll be better. Now, what Nicole was talking about a minute ago was, well, maybe you didn't get to some deeper issues, deeper emotional issues. Maybe you haven't touched on those, and maybe you haven't processed those. And that can certainly be the case as well.
Yeah. I think we have a great question from Rudy in the chat about Nicole. So what happens when the repressed emotional trigger cannot be stopped, such as war, over policing, a global pandemic that just doesn't end? How can the patients continue to work through that trigger that just keeps coming up?
It's a great question. And actually, it was the #1 question we got on the Sarno panel. I remember it well. There was always someone, if not more than one person, who would raise their hand and say, I know the problem. It's my boss. He abuses me. I hate going to work every day, but I can't quit this job. That was always, that kind of flavor was always one of the questions. And Dr. Sarno would always stand up because he always had his Dr. Sarno questions that he would want to answer directly, not put it to the panel. And he would say, we are here to rid you of chronic pain. We might not be able to solve every problem in your life by doing this work, but all you need to do is bring the feelings that you have about it from your unconscious repressed world into your consciousness, show your brain that it is safe to feel these things, and the chronic pain will go away. So the way one feels about war, about inequity, about whatever it is that makes you sick inside, climate change, or maybe it's something personal, something happening with your children or your job or money or COVID or anything, it may or may not change as you walk through this experience, as Howard said, of being human. There's no cure for the human condition. So sorry. We're all here to be alive and to live it out. And actually, that's great news, because part of being human is to be in the struggle and the beautiful lessons that we take from it. Having said that, we don't need to solve those problems to be out of pain. We need to be able to sit gently with those problems with kindness and self-compassion, feel through what it really means to us, admit to ourselves that being within the state of affairs that is bothering us feels impossible, feels terrible, feels awful, feels enraging, admitting those things to ourselves, becoming aligned with the fact that this is just what is what is, the pain signals stop firing. And then here you are, still maybe pissed off about all those things, but without having that incredibly extra problem of your body feeling like your body is against you, which of course in theory, it's really not. It's really protecting you and it's really quite for you, but it can feel really difficult when you're in it.
Yeah. Ooh, I am feeling some feelings just hearing that. So thank you. Howard, I think the idea of, I mean, not the idea, but inflammation is coming up a lot lately, and we've seen a lot of questions about this. So how do you think about inflammation's role in chronic pain, as well as, can the body actually create inflammation? I'm sorry, the brain really create inflammation if there is a mind-body syndrome?
Yeah, that's a great question. We deal with this a lot because there's a lot of folks out there saying that the main cause of chronic pain is inflammation. And people come to me saying, well, my body's inflamed. I have inflammation. And I go, how do you know? And they go, well, people told me, or I eat certain foods. And there's a whole curriculum out there of, how, what foods to eat or not to eat to cure chronic pain, because certain foods are inflammatory. But what's happening is it's basically making people feel afraid of food. So I have a lot of people on the fear food diet. And so they're just afraid of eating anything because everything can be bad for them. And it's not true. Okay, so first of all, inflammation, there's a difference between macroinflammation and microinflammation. Macroinflammation is inflammation you can see. You have a strep throat, you have macroinflammation. You have an abscess, you have macroinflammation. That can cause pain because you have tissue damage. Microinflammation, everyone has, and microinflammation does not cause pain. We all have some amount of inflammation in our body, but that's a micro thing. It's what you can't see. We have inflammation in our gums, in our arteries, in a variety of places. That is not the cause of chronic pain. And so what we're doing is helping people to free themselves from the worry of inflammation and live their lives and free themselves from the worry of foods that are causing inflammation or whatever. Now, can the brain cause microinflammation? Can stress cause microinflammation? The answer is yes, but that would not be a cause of pain. Can the brain cause macroinflammation? In other words, can the brain cause rheumatoid arthritis? Can stress and emotional distress cause lupus or an autoimmune disease? And we don't know for sure. There's evidence to show that people with high levels of adverse childhood experiences have higher levels of autoimmune disorders. So there is clearly been demonstrated that there can be a connection there. But that doesn't mean that all autoimmune disorders are stress-related. And it doesn't mean that we can cure all autoimmune disorders by doing this work. On the other hand, the brain does influence the immune system. So if you have somebody with an autoimmune disease with macroinflammation, yeah, we will usually do medical treatment and mind-body treatment together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
May I add a little bit to that,
Please,
Marian?
yes, of course.
So I have a former patient who was also a patient of Dr. Sachs. He actually referred her into my practice years ago. She was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And the only reason I'm saying this is because I want there to be just a pinprick of hope, because although I absolutely agree with Dr. Schubiner, and I also, he's the doctor, so it wouldn't even if I didn't, it wouldn't matter. But the point is that I just know that she was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Her hands were like claws. She couldn't open a jar. She couldn't go down a banister. And through doing this work with Dr. Sachs and with me, she is absolutely symptom-free of that. And it's something I saw with my own eyes. And so just seeing things like that really gives me the hope and perspective that I think the TMS perspective touches pretty much everything that concerns our health.
Yeah. I mean, also for that patient, was that, again, like a misdiagnosis, or was she able to overcome? Yeah.
and she had so many other things as well. And she
Right.
was one of these people, which is a very common story, where she just went from one thing to another with her symptom imperatives until she finally really surrendered and stopped being afraid and stopped going to another specialist for another symptom. And that's when she became totally chronic pain-free, and has been for years. She's an incredible success story.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think that's something that comes up in these conversations a lot, which is ultimately you can try. If you're not, even if you're not sure that this work will work for you, I don't think there's any hurt in trying it. You might be able to manage some of your symptoms through mind-body work, even if you have, you know, something that a physician is telling you is a structural problem. So I hope that offers some hope to people out there. Ken, we're getting a lot of questions about where people can find resources. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the ways folks can do some of this work with, even if there's not a mind-body physician local to them or a therapist?
Oh, you're asking me. Well, hopefully Howard will chime in too. But yeah, it's how to do, you know, there's the PPDA Association keeps a list of practitioners to find locally in your area. We also have a link to their work on our website, thismighthurtfilm.com. We have a lot of online just resources to read about your specific condition on our website, things like fibromyalgia or CRPS. Howard Schubiner's website on Learn Your Pain has that. Nicole Sachs's website, I'm sure, has also resources. If you're looking for online community, there's the TMS Wiki online, which is all free. If you want to pay, there is the Curable app, which has a dedicated Facebook community for the people, and I've poked around on there, and it seems like a really great community. They also seem to do groups where, you know, you get together with 8 people and do like an 8-week course where you meet people on Zoom. I'm going to pause there. Howard, feel free to add
And Nicole.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's, go ahead,
Howard.
Nicole. No, go ahead.
Oh, well, I kind of glanced at the chat and saw that somebody says, not on Facebook, I don't use Facebook. And I do understand that people have concerns about Facebook, but I also want to say that I have an online community. It happens to be on Facebook, but it's a private secret group, which means that if you join it, even if you join Facebook just to join it, it's called JournalSpeak with Nicole Sachs. I have thousands and thousands of people in it, and they are so loving and supportive. And I am on it. I have 3 dedicated moderators who are very, very informed. One of them is a coach himself, and others are just incredible success stories that know a lot about this work. A lot of questions are answered, and being a secret group, nobody ever sees the posts except for the people that are screened and are admitted into the group by myself and my moderators. And also your name doesn't come up as being on Facebook for any other reason. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there. It's free. It's wonderful. The energy there is very protected. We do not allow for any bullying or any suggestion of physical cures. We're really careful about that. So that's my community on Facebook, JournalSpeak. And also I have an online course that, although it isn't working with me directly, I have heard people tell me that it's incredibly effective in walking them through. It's 14 lessons. It's original videos. Guided meditations, art therapy exercises, and reading and writing assignments that carry you through this work from the beginning to the end. And so, you know, you can check that out. That's if you want to invest a little bit of money, but also a ton of free resources. You know, I have a podcast. Curable has a podcast, although that might seem like, oh, how's it going to help me listen to a podcast? It's incredibly welcoming to know that there are so many other people that are going through exactly what you're going through. Every other week, I interview somebody who is a success story, or I do something called Real-Time Heal, where I have a real-time therapy session with absolutely no prep, right on air, and walk someone who might feel like someone just like you through this process and help them and answer all their questions. So yeah, if you're, I have tons of free stuff. So just go to my website, thecureforchronicpain.com. And that's a good place to start with my work. I know that there's also a lot of other people doing it their way, and I admire, and I'm so grateful for all of it, because it takes all of us to bring this message. There's so many people that need to hear it.
Yeah, Howard, do you have anything to add?
In terms of resources, The Curable app is an excellent one. I work with Hal Greenham in Australia. We have an online program, freedomfromchronicpain.com. Lynn Health is a new organization that's just starting up. That's actually kind of out of Israel and the US. Lynn.health, and some of my colleagues are working with them. And then there's a bunch of therapists that have organizations like the Alan Gordon's group, Pain Psychology Center in Los Angeles. Daniel Lyman has a group in Portland, Oregon, who's doing a direct individual therapy. Christy Weepy, my friend and colleague, also has an organization now called bettermindtherapy.com. So, and if anyone wants to email me, just send me an email, hschubiner@gmail.com. If you have questions that we haven't answered or specific things that you want my help with.
Yeah, I just want to follow up with a couple of things. I've been on Nicole's group. I can honestly say they're really, really kind people there, non-judgmental people. I know you don't always get that online. So I really support that one. We also have a ton of resources on thismighthurtfilm.com. And as Kent and I mentioned before, we are working really hard to get into universities and reach future practitioners, whether they be psychologists, LCSWs, physicians, physical therapists, massage therapists, whoever might work with patients in pain. We are trying really hard to reach those groups, screen the film for them, have these conversations with them so that they can continue to spread the work as well, because obviously, as Nicole said, it does take all of us, and it's amazing to see how much this work has grown, since we started the film. I feel really lucky to, be able to engage with this community every day and see it grow and see the ideas get further and further. So thank you all for that. I think we have time for just one more question. Howard, I think, something that has been coming up a lot, especially is fibromyalgia. I know the study a few months ago with the mice getting injected with fibromyalgia patients' blood made people think, oh, like maybe it is actually a physical problem. So how do you approach fibromyalgia in comparison with, other physicians?
Well, kind of like I was saying before, everyone needs an individual attention. Everyone needs individual evaluation. If the diagnosis is actually fibromyalgia, that means that you've ruled out a structural disease process. There's no evidence for disease process or tissue damage in that disorder. And there's a lot of disorders like that, like tension headaches, migraine headaches, irritable bowel syndrome, small fiber neuropathy, non-ulcer dyspepsia, vulvodynia, coccydynia, pudendal neuralgia. All those are ones when that's the diagnosis, that means the doctor has ruled out, interstitial cystitis is another one. That means the doctor has ruled out a structural disorder. So you can be very confident that when you have one of those disorders, including fibromyalgia, that this is a neural circuit or a mind-body disorder. And then you can confirm it by the pattern of the symptoms. And the classic thing about fibromyalgia is the symptoms tend to spread and move and shift and come and go and be triggered by innocuous stimuli like weather and stress and sound and light and all those sorts of things. And so it becomes very, very obvious within a short time when you just apply this paradigm and you look at the individual person, because it doesn't really matter so much what it is in general. What really matters is what is it for you. And if that's what it is for you, you will know it because you can see these patterns very clearly. So yeah, fibromyalgia is not one that we have a problem with diagnosing.
Great.
And I will say that every single diagnosis that Dr. Schubiner just mentioned, I have seen in my over 20 years of doing this over and over and over again, resolved completely with this work, every single one. So you should be, if that's something that's affecting you, someone who's watching this, please open yourself to this process. It's absolutely possible.
Great. Well, thank you so much to our two panelists, Dr. Schubiner, Nicole Sachs. Dr. Schubiner is at unlearnyourpain.com. Nicole's at thecureforchronicpain.com, and her podcasts, The Cure for Chronic Pain, on all the places where podcasts live. And I really recommend it. And as she's saying, you know, she has seen all of these conditions, and there are probably whole episodes dedicated to them. So you can probably just go find exactly what you might be dealing with.
Is anybody nervous?
Yeah.
We're literally on this together because what we're here for is to get better.
Tingling to numbness, primarily my left hand.
100 million Americans suffer from chronic pain.
This illness has taken a lot out of me, out of my family.
Just the worst pain that I've ever imagined in my life.
He's taking all these meds and he's no better than he was.
Millions of patients with pain have become opioid addicted.
We have this idea that when there's pain, there's something wrong with the body. It's not always that simple.
Hysterectomy, colostomy, ileostomy, but then the pain came back.
The brain is powerful and can cause almost any symptom imaginable. How does our life events affect our body? That's what we're going to go through today.
It terrifies me.
I can see that.
I would reject the notion that everybody with chronic pain has a psychological origin.
You're saying that if I fully express my anger, that's going to help me not have a headache?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't expect Dr. Schubiner to cure me.
I call BS. It's pretty succinct, to the point.
I don't know exactly what to expect.
People have been taught to suppress emotions in general. What I'm doing in my class is helping them express rather than holding it in.
I fought my whole life.
Just tore my life apart.
I'm angry and I'm sad.
This treatment is not for everybody.
Now I'm experiencing new symptoms, and so I'm freaking out.
You're stirring things up.
My shit is so stirred up.
If you had told me a month ago that I could will my pain away, I'd have told you you were on drugs.